Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome wherever you are. Welcome, whatever you thought you were getting into. Instead of getting into what you thought you were getting into, you are getting into this 6 questions with Dan and Michelle, which is what this is right now. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Dan.
This is one of those like stream of consciousness type shows I'm feeling today. So I don't
Yeah,
know. This could get bizarre, but we can roll with that.
we love Bizarre.
We do.
Yeah, we
We
do
do.
well with Bizarre.
We do. We actually do pretty good. So I don't know if our guest is ready for the whole bizarre thing, but we'll see. Our guest today is somebody who's got quite a cool story, and that we did a very interesting feature on recently that got some great responses. So we wanted to have him on today. Please to welcome Dave Dine.
Woo! Woo, woo,
Thanks.
woo,
Good morning.
woo, woo, woo,
Thanks for
woo.
being with us, Dave. Dave, there's so much to Dave, and we'll get into a lot of it. Dave leads the trucking curriculum at Patterson High School in California. He also was instrumental in starting with another of our recent guests, Lindsay Trent, um, Next Generation in Trucking. And what that organization does is it helps other high schools all across the country start trucking curriculums like the one in Patterson. And at last, I think I heard that 50 had done so across the nation.
That's correct. Yes.
That's that's
Oh,
quite an achievement
yes.
for this organization. So
Huge.
we've written on that already. We've done some work with them. So it's really great to have Dave with us. And we're going to find out a little bit more about what led Dave into this. So without further ado, because I like to speak French with the rolling R's, let's get into that now. Dave, you had a pivotal moment in your life when you were playing catch with a football with a young man at a barbecue. And it set in motion a whole bunch of things in your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I actually was graduated from Cal State Stanislaus with a business degree, but drove a truck to pay my way through college. And after graduating from college, I ended up with a job at Frito-Lay as a driver, but they're going to work me into an entry-level management position. And literally, this was my dream. I spent the last 8 years focused on it. It actually took me 8 years to get my college degree. So I actually had everything was like lining up. And it was like, at least in my opinion, things were lining up. And ended up at a friend's barbecue one day. And there were some people there I didn't know. And I saw this young boy in the background. He's off to the side in the backyard. I remember his name. His name was Anthony. And so I just picked up a football and started playing catch with him. And, as we're playing catch, I was like, this is before I was married and had kids of my own. And I'm like, well, I'll ask him the same question people always asked me growing up, which was, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he stopped and he held the ball. And I still remember the look on his face. And he said, when I grow up, I want to go to prison. And it literally just like, I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond. I remember just kind of staring at him, like puzzled. And then I found out later, his dad was incarcerated. And I realized he just wants to go be with his dad. I get that. But it still kind of weighed on my heart. And about 2 weeks later, I was talking to a friend and I was very upset about how messed up our society is. And it's so wrong when a young boy wants to grow up and go to prison. And he stopped me and he says, Dave, he goes, if you want to change the world, he goes, become a teacher. And I laughed at him. I'm thinking, I don't teach. I'm a truck driver with a business degree. That's all I do. And he said, try subbing in your days off. So back then it was very easy. I filled out some paperwork and I started subbing. And the thing that struck me the most is about the third classroom I walked into, they all had one thing in common. And it had to do with the sub plans, the instructions for the day. And at the bottom of all the sub plans was always a list of students' names with a title. And the title was, problem kids, like keep an eye out for these guys. These guys are going to give you a hard time today. And I guess I took such great personal offense to that because I was probably in somebody's list at some time. And I kept thinking, how dare that teacher, you label them, but now you're telling me to label these poor kids. So I remember they always had the red pen. So I took out their red pen and I scratched off the word problem and I wrote the word possibility. thinking these are not your problem kids. These are your possibility kids. And it was that day I decided I didn't walk away from trucking. I just kind of did a pivot because I kept trucking. But that was the day I decided to become an elementary school teacher and decided that I was going to make a difference.
Amazing.
And you are. So what do you think is the most rewarding part about being a teacher?
Oh my gosh. When you invest in somebody and you see them prosper and you see lives being transformed, it didn't hit me when I first started the Patterson program. I really thought I was going to be teaching truck driving. And it was about 2 months into the program, I had a parent that came to me one day after school, and usually net parents usually never show up. And he came after school one day and he said, "I'm here to shake your hand." And I'm like, "For what?" And he said, "For saving my son Javier." And I'm like, I don't understand. And he said, "Well, before Javier took your trucking class, he was on a path of self-destruction. He was mixed up in gang activity and drug dealing. That was his path in life." And they said, for the first time in a long time, they feel like they got their son back. And that's when I realized this is more than just a truck driving class. This is an empowerment class. And that's what we do. We create a safe environment for people that have been mislabeled their entire lives because of academic grades. We give them an area with that we relabel them, and we see the value in people. And that's the most beautiful thing. And then every time, one of my graduates goes out to be, they get that success, those are my paydays. And I keep telling people I'm the richest person in the world, right? We just had our second graduate. He got hired on with Walmart, age of 21, and starting salary $106,000 a year. And that's great. And he's taking care of his family. And it's like, these are beautiful stories. And I'm just proud that I get to be a part of that journey.
It wasn't part of the issue at first. I don't know if they're still doing it, but I remember you telling me that they would, when the trekking curriculum was established, the school would kind of like stick kids that they didn't really think had a lot of academic potential into the truck. Like all they can be is truck drivers, and they didn't really take that seriously as a career path.
Yeah. So now remember, I'm coming from elementary into a high school. So I was maybe a little nervous already going into this new environment, and reading their discipline records of the ones that were placed in my trucking class that first year, I was a little bit nervous. I was scared. I'm like, this is not going to be good. I'm worried about getting physically harmed. The interesting part is that first year is like zero discipline problems. Zero. Everybody showed up on time. Nobody cut my class. They would cut the other classes, but they said, "Mr. Dein, we always make sure we get to trucking." No F-bombs being thrown in the class. It was just like, I believe in the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you tell somebody they're going to be great, they're going to be great. And so that's the beautiful part about this class.
So Dave, what do you think is the most important skill that students need to succeed in the logistics and trucking field?
I think what makes this program so unique, like I said, we're not like any other truck driving school in the nation. What we focus on first is the mindset first, then the skill set. I think a lot of truck driving schools, they say, well, let's just teach you how to grab some gears and how to drive the truck. It's like, oh, no, that's irresponsible. We teach the mindset first. In fact, we got these banners all throughout the classroom of industry partners. The biggest banner that we have in this classroom, it says leadership in motion. That's our belief. And we look at how do you develop not a truck driver, but how do you develop a professional truck driver? And it's so rewarding when we go out on field trips. We've had managers come up to me several times and they say, "Dave, I wish my drivers were as mature as your students." And that says a lot, right? Because we hold our students at a higher standard, but we give them the opportunity to look at those professional driver qualities, and we isolate them, and we give them a chance to kind of play around with them, to explore them, to reflect upon them. And the more you kind of like embed those skills, I mean, they become part of your life. It's no longer like it's not an acting class. This is like leadership development.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is so much more to being a truck driver than just knowing how to operate the truck. There's everything from choosing the loads you want to haul, to understanding what your per mile rates should be, to understanding the regulations. And of course, and I'm sure you put a lot of emphasis on this, an awful lot of the people who go into the industry go in as owner operators.
Mhm.
So they have to, they are operating their own businesses. That's a
Yes.
whole lot more than just making that truck go back and forth.
Mhm. But I think the key is, I think we had a lot of people that entered into trucking for the money. They heard you can make good money
Mhm.
driving a truck, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that doesn't help our industry. We got to bring people that have a passion for trucking. You know, we got to bring back the Knights of the Road. That's what we got to do. Is we got to change the image.
Knights of the Road. I
Yes.
love that.
I know, that is so cool.
That's my belief. It's like, and I know we can bring them back. And I think we're going to look back 20 years from now, and we're going to say, when did the industry change for the better? And I think it's all going to point right back here to little old Patterson and how we took a program here and we spread it across the US.
Dave, you were having trouble sleeping one night, and God had something to say to you.
Yep.
What did he say?
Well, let me kind of set that whole scenario up.
Okay.
Having some health issues, and these health
Okay.
issues were going on for about 3 months. We're at the point where we're starting to see some specialists, and I had one doctor who, after going through all the symptoms, he says, "Well," he goes, "Dave, it sounds like you might have a brain tumor." He goes, "Let's go ahead and do the CT scan, and I'll let you know in 3 or 4 days what the results are." And I'm like, I remember going to bed that night thinking, "Oh crap!" It was like, I thought I thought my life was perfect. Our oldest boy at the time was just born. He's about a year old. And I'm thinking this could be it. And so I remember laying in bed, and I was not asleep at this point. I remember laying in bed, and I did see my, like, a spirit rise on my body. And I stood in front of, and then I kind of instantly stood in front of it was a giant, like, pure white sphere. And I knew instantly it was God. It wasn't like I needed an introduction. And the only thing I heard were the words, "How have you served me?" And I remember I couldn't even move my lips because I knew anything I would say would be a total lie. Because up until that point, I felt like I pretty much served myself. And the next thing I know, I kind of wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I go, everything changes today. And I always kind of struggled with, like, what are my spiritual gifts? I always felt like when I was in line for spiritual gifts, like, God just, like, passed over me. And what do you want me to do? Do you want me to hand out cookies after the church service? That's not me either. And then I realized that my gifts were in front of me the entire time. It's what you love doing. I love teaching. I love trucking. And I'm like, well, why not start my own truck driving school to those people who've been marginalized? So we decided, I had a really nice Chevy 4-wheel I'd pick up at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to sell that truck. I'm going to buy my own truck and start working with guys coming out of prison. And just because I read the number one thing that would keep somebody from reoffending is a job. I'm like, I can give people jobs driving trucks. So we sold my truck, and about a week later, our roof started leaking for about the same amount of money as what I sold the truck for. And I became very angry at God, like, what are you doing? It's like, you tell me to do this, and now you're going to take it away from me. It was kind of like him saying, hey, listen, idiot, I didn't tell you to do this by yourself. And so kind of we decided, like, let's start as a nonprofit. And what we realized is that there's so many people that I knew who were in the same situation I was. They wanted to serve, but they didn't know what their gifts were. But some were really good mechanics, and some were really good at training. And so we brought this group of people together to start a nonprofit called Faith Logistics. And we'd work with people coming out of prison each summer. And that was a beautiful ministry that we did for 10 summers until the California Air Resource Board decided to deem all of our trucks non-compliant. So we had 7 trucks at the time. And
Yeah.
but it was like, it was like, but then 2 months later, we heard about the Patterson High School logistics program, and that opened up the door to take the heart of Faith Logistics. We dissolved the entity, but the heart is we just put it in a different location.
So you accomplished a lot over those 10 years, and then you also gave yourself the qualifications that were needed to head up what's going on in Patterson.
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
so it worked, but it's one door closes, another door opens. We hear
There you
that
go.
all the time.
Yes. Yep,
So
exactly.
were you completely terrified when God spoke to you?
I don't know. It wasn't, I remember being scared at the time because I knew I just, yeah, I think we will need that wake up call. Um, and I've heard him on one other occasion. It wasn't the only time I've heard from him. So where I've actually heard the words, his Holy Spirit is like every time I come up with what I consider like a really interesting and good idea for our program, I know instantly that idea came from God. I'm not smart enough to come up with any of it. But it's like I always like, okay, thanks God, thanks for another great idea. And it does. It turns into something really cool. So
Dave, if you were not involved in the trucking industry, what other career do you think you might have pursued?
I don't know. This is what this is my love. It's been my love since I was a kid. You know, growing
Yeah.
up, hearing my father, my father drove a truck in World War II for 4.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
So coming home, I didn't have
In
like
World War II?
in World War II. Yes, he was drafted.
Which theater?
He was in the South Pacific.
Okay.
So he got
Wow.
drafted at 18, 4.5 years driving truck in Australia, New Guinea, the Philippines. So when he came home started a family, I didn't grow up with those typical nursery rhymes, right? I grew up with hearing trucking stories in the South Pacific, and
Yeah.
those are what captured
Wow.
my imagination. And I always knew that someday I wanted to have my own stories. And the only way I knew how to do that is like I need to go out and drive a truck. And I those stories for my kids. And I do have some amazing stories today because of that inspiration.
Wow.
You know, the really cool thing is we did our high school program, the trucking program. We did a race across America a couple years ago, and my father's actually buried at a national cemetery. And so we had the opportunity to actually take a wreath. You know, my trucking students are now putting a wreath on my father's grave. The man who inspired me to go into trucking is now there with the next generation. I thought that was cool.
That's beautiful.
No wonder there was no plan B. How could there be?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I know. This is all I know. And I keep telling people, if they take this program away from me today, like for whatever reason, I'll be in the parking lot tomorrow teaching truck driving.
That's how you know it's real.
Yeah. Dave, you mentioned to me the first time we talked that you described yourself as a DF student when you were in school. I mean, here you are a teacher. Okay.
Ironic.
I want to hear more about that. I was like a CD student. All right. You're not dumb. I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
But tell me about, I guess, why was it a struggle? Why were grades a struggle for you? And how did you kind of work through that to figure out that it didn't mean you were dumb, assuming you did?
Yeah, I think on one side of that is that I learn differently. I don't do well by reading a book and taking a test on it. I need to be doing something hands-on. And whatever I'm doing, I have to really believe in what I'm doing. It's not, you know, if it has no value to me, I'm
Yeah.
not really going to buy into it. And I think that was a struggle I had going through school is that there's no connection being made. It's like, why do I need to learn this? And so
Mhm.
I checked out, and it literally wasn't until I went to truck driving school in 1988 where I went from getting, you know, the DF student, I became an A student. In fact, I remember helping like other students in the class, like helping them with their logbooks. And I just like embraced this whole learning process. And it was fun. I couldn't wait to learn more. And my first job was hauling milk out of Tulare. And the sun was coming up one morning. And I was just kind of thinking about that whole process of going from a DF student to an A student. And that's when I realized that I'm not stupid. I just didn't care in high school.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see so many young people today that they just don't care. And I think, well, whose fault is it? It's like, well, we don't give them a whole lot to care about. And so I really can't blame the students. we we need to create more, and I'm not saying we need more truck driving programs, which we do. We need just more vocational training programs, period, whatever that looks like, because we
Yeah.
got to create more opportunities. Not everybody's going to college, nor should they.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. And when I think about the whole question of like the student not caring, because I do think that before you can ask anyone, because what I always used to get was, well, you're not applying yourself. And when you're that young, you're not really sure like what the substantive response to that is, and later on in life, you look back and you're like, if somebody said that to me now, I would say, because I don't see why I should give a rip about this. And you're like, you don't have the courage to say that when you're young.
Right.
So, but I think there's two sides to it. On the one hand, the kids do need to care about their futures. And yet, like you said, if you're not giving them a reason to connect this thing you're telling them to care about to their future, I don't know why they would.
Right. Yeah.
So, and clearly you've applied that to your teaching because like you said, yours is the one they show up for. They don't skip. They take it seriously. You don't have disciplinary problems because they can see themselves using this.
Right. And I try to create a class that I would be successful in at their age. This isn't a come in and sit behind a desk and take a test. This is like, okay, let's come in. We're going to take a little bit of the knowledge that we learn and let's go to apply it to something. Let's go out and we'll use the simulator. We'll go apply it onto the truck. And so it's very fast paced, but it's highly engaging and it's meaningful. So there's a lot of buy-in.
Excellent.
Need more teachers like you. Dave, what do you love most about your wife, Kim?
Oh my gosh. She's the glue, of course. Over the years, I've had probably some crazy ideas. When I said, hey, I want to take a year off of teaching to start a nonprofit, she never once questioned, how are we going to pay the bills? We can't, it was always like, yeah, all right, let's do it. Let's figure it out. And so to have somebody that really believes in you, that means a lot. So yes.
How long have you been married?
It'll be 20 years in December, and I'll actually be at the ACTE conference. That's a conference where the five of us from across the U.S. they're going to make the award for National Teacher of the Year. So she'll be at that event, which is really cool.
Okay.
On our anniversary day.
Yeah.
Well, see, now this is an understanding wife. On our 20th anniversary, we're going to be where doing what? You're not getting any grief for that. That's quite a lot.
That's cool. No, she's great. So she's she does so much on her own as far as helping out others, and she's part of a group called Knitted Knockers, where they create prosthetics for women who have had breast cancer and lost their breasts. So she does a lot of great work and supportive of our wonderful boys, and I'm very proud of her.
How many boys do you have?
We have two. So John just graduated from Turlock Christian, and he was awarded as an FFA state officer. So he's taken a gap year, and he's representing there's 105 FFA members in California. So he's a representative of that. So he's been called to service too. So, and Jake's in high school, and he's a junior, staying busy with sports.
No, you have no girls.
No, yeah, even our dog's a boy.
Well, sounds like great family. You're doing great things, Dave. It's really been a pleasure to get to talk to you about these things, get to help let the world know about it. So thank you so much for that. Thanks for being with us. It was a great time talking with you.
Thank you.
Everybody, hope you all enjoyed it. Join us again next time for another 6 Questions with Dan and Michelle.
See ya.